Hello, I'm Dr. Alveda King, and I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the Center for the American Dream at America First Policy Institute. Today, I have the honor and the privilege of interviewing a true patriot, and it's such a wonderful time to be with you today. You've devoted your entire life to God and country. You and your wife, of course, are parents, and yet you both have time to serve God in America, and we really appreciate that. So, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, it's wonderful to greet you. We know in North Carolina, you were elected as the first Black American to be elected as Lieutenant Governor. But it's so much more about the content of your character, and as a human being, a member of the human race, we are going to really continue to do this work together. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
God bless you. Now, many people think they know you and they think they know your story, but you can tell us best. So can you talk to us just a few moments about what your life was like as you were growing up and the obstacles you had to overcome from a young age? I understand your father was a very mature man when you were born.
He was. I say sometimes I had a very non-traditional upbringing, and I guess in many ways it was. We didn't have the Leave It to Beaver household or the television household. My mother and father were very far apart in age. I was born in 1968. Okay. My father was born in 1897.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
He was 41 when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and he was 71 when I was born.
My goodness.
So there was a lot of distance between him and my mom, and that also put a lot of distance between him and I. I did not grow up having long conversations with my father, going fishing with my father, or things that other folks are able to do. My father passed away when I was 12. I always tell people I didn't know my father intimately, but even though I didn't know him intimately, I knew that he loved us. And the way that I knew that he loved us was the fact that he never abandoned us. He never abandoned my mom. He was always there to provide for us as best he could and protect us as best he could. So we knew that he truly loved us.
Now that was so much to be admired. What about your mother? I understand she was a woman of great faith.
Absolutely, absolutely. When my father passed away, and you have to understand, my mother and father had a very contentious relationship. My father came up at a different age. He didn't believe that my mother should work outside the home, so she never did. And when my father passed away, it left my mom with 5 children in her house. Ranging in age, I think, from 2nd grade to a senior in high school. My brother was a senior in high school. And I love the story that my mom would tell us. She said a friend of hers came to see her shortly after my father died and told her, well, now you don't have to do anything. You can live off welfare. She said, I can take you downtown and I can show you all the things you can sign up for. She said, and you'll have it made for the rest of your life. Well, my mom bid that lady farewell, and when she did, she said she thought to herself, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and get me a job, and she did. My mom got a job as a custodian at North Carolina A&T State University, and that's how she took care of us. Wow. And it was amazing to see how the trajectory of our life started to go upwards when my mom started working. When she went to work and started earning money with the strength of her own hands, it really turned our lives around. And I'm still amazed at what my mom was able to do on that meager salary. And she was able to do it because, number one, she was determined, and number two, she had her priorities in order.
Lieutenant Governor, I do want to add this because it's amazing. My father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, was not always at home. He was in the civil rights movement with his brother, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So he was gone all the time. And so Mom was kind of running the house. He was a pastor, so he'd give her his paycheck every month and say, you run the house, I have to do this. He did not want her to work outside the house. Yes. So that was just what we would call an old-fashioned thought, because today both people really do, parents do need to work sometimes. And so when my daddy died, because she would slip off and get jobs anyway, and he'd have a fit, and they would go back and forth, back and forth. So that's not uncommon.
It's not.
But your mother appears to have been so remarkable in raising you. My mother had to raise 5 children when my dad was killed.
Yes.
And she was able to do that, and she did go into the marketplace and the workplace, and that does happen. So that's an amazing story. That's something that we don't know about you. Isn't that amazing?
That's right.
So thank you for sharing that. That's real personal and intimate. As a role model, I just heard 2 things though, the strength and the faith and the courage of your mother, but your dad, the protector and providing until he died.
Yes.
Now that's something, sir, that many people don't have today, many children. They are fatherless. Sometimes the mothers are distressed and whatever. So I believe just by the lifestyle that you're living in leadership is giving us hope. Absolutely. So I'm real glad. Now I do have another question. How did you come to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, and in what capacity? What was that like?
From the time I was a little kid, I was always fascinated with the Army, with policemen, people in uniform, and one of my favorite things to do was to go to the public library. The public library to me was like this refuge. It started off as a refuge simply because they had something called air conditioning.
Yeah.
And so you could go in there and it's nice and cool, but then you discover this other great thing they had in there, the books. And I would oftentimes go down to the main library there in Greensboro, and I distinctly remember there was one librarian in particular who, every time I walked in, she would ask me the same thing. She would say, "What do you want to look at today?" And I'd say, "Well, I'd like to see some books about soldiers, or I'd like to see some books about policemen, or about trains," whatever it may be. And she would find books for me and put them on the table, and I would sit there for hours and look at them. But the books about the soldiers were particularly fascinating to me. And you have to remember this was the 1970s, so there was a lot of material there about World War II. But the one thing that I always saw in those books, I saw soldiers who, of course, the majority of them were white. Very rarely did I ever see a picture of a black sailor or airman or Marine. And I'm not going to say it was distressing to me, but I just didn't see myself represented there.
Right.
I came to realize what an impact that made the very first time I saw a black man wearing Marine Corps dress blues. I went to church one Sunday, and we were having what they would have every year. They would have a thing where they would celebrate what people do for a living, including being in the military. And I remember walking into the church that day and seeing this black man, tall, strong guy, standing there wearing Marine Corps dress blues.
Regalia, yeah.
And when I saw it, it gave me great energy, and it let me know that I could be just like those folks that I saw in those books. And I tell people all the time, there's this world that we want to desperately live in where color doesn't matter. But you have to remember, we're only about a century and a half removed from slavery being a legal standard.
Absolutely.
We have a long way to go in this country, and we've come a mighty long way, and we've made great strides. But it is still very important for people to see themselves represented. And the very first time I saw that individual wearing those dress blues, I thought to myself, now I know I can be a Marine, I could be a sailor, I can join the United States Army. And so that's how I ended up having a lifelong love of the military. I joined the military while I was in high school, the summer between my 11th and 12th grade year, joined the Army Reserves, and then I went off to basic training the summer right after my 12th grade year. I served as what they call a 91A10. That was a medical specialist. I was trained to work as a combat medic, a field hospital medic, and a standard hospital medic, more or less a nurse's aide. And I was attached to the 396 Ambulance Company out of Winston-Salem. And
wow.
Served in the active reserves for 4 years.
I was in the ROTC in high school.
Yes.
And my daughter is married to a military man. He's in the Army.
Yes.
And of course, we have high regard. And
yes.
That's something else that we didn't know about you.
That's right.
And so we salute you for that,
Absolutely.
sir.
That was in junior ROTC in high school as well. And
yes.
that was I think that's the one thing that kept me in high school, actually.
It will. Yes. So that learning the American dream, becoming patriotic through those experiences, and you still have that today. And right. So there again, we are very glad that you have been a servant to God, to America, a family man, and all of that. It's just amazing. Now, I'm going to make a little joke because I have jokes.
Okay.
You just put down one uniform for another because those suits and ties that you appear in all the time,
Yes.
that's just another uniform.
It sure is another uniform. You got that exactly right. That's right.
And you wear it well. Your faith, sir, I know that you are a man of faith. Talk to us about your faith.
Well, I grew up in church, going to church. My father wouldn't let my mom go to church, but he'd allowed us to be. She dressed us up and sent us off. She had to be in the house. She sure did.
Taking care of him in the house.
Yeah. Hey,
oh my goodness. Hey. Okay.
But we would go off and go to church, and at church, that was the first time that I saw black men who had good jobs and kind of served as my role models. With my dad being the person that he was and having some of the issues that he had, unfortunately, he couldn't serve as that role model. He was there, he was a protector, and he loved us. And I truly believe he did the best that he could, given what he had. But my mom was always determined to make sure we were around people that could serve as good role models. She was very determined to make sure we never associate with the wrong people. And church was the one place where I saw those role models that I finally pointed to and said, when I grow up, I want to be like him. I want to have a nice home. I want to have a nice career. I want to have a nice family. I want to emulate that. I want to be that way. So that was how I saw my first. That's where my first role models were in the church. But unfortunately, in the church, I did not get a strong spiritual base. I went to church the entire time, from the time I was a small child all the way through high school, and never knew what it meant to be saved. Wow. Never knew what it meant. I heard the words, but didn't know what they meant. It wasn't until one Saturday evening that a friend of mine called me and invited me to a campus revival at North Carolina A&T. And I went, and that was the night that I got saved.
Amazing.
It was. I got saved at a student union at A&T.
Praise God.
And I've been on that track ever since, and we've been growing in our faith. And here's the thing about my spiritual walk. The closer I found myself getting to God, and the more I find myself being obedient to God, the better my life has become. My wife can testify to that as well.
I believe that you are a role model in your life of faith, and yet you're also probably a mentor, and you're able to mentor others. And I believe that for those families who are distressed or maybe broken, I had a divorce and a broken family, and my sons were especially mentored by men of the church.
Yes. And
so that's very important. So don't lose hope, families. If you need examples, there are wonderful role models like Lieutenant Governor here. And so that there is hope and there's help in every community. Now that faith is astounding. And when I first met you and your wife, and you walked and you just humbly, to me, came and took your seat and waited until you were called to speak, and it didn't bother you. I think he was probably praying under his breath. I imagine. So we're very grateful for your faith and your life of faith, and you wear that well as well. Now, in 2018, you had an opportunity to defend the Second Amendment. Can you talk to us about that experience?
Well, 2018, I was extremely busy. I was working full-time in a furniture manufacturing facility and going to school full-time, pursuing a degree in history. My ultimate goal was to become a history professor, which is something I still hope to do at some point, just teach history.
Wow.
But at the same time, I was, I guess, a quasi-social media influencer. I had probably 15,000 followers on social media. And it was all political. It was all political commentary. Some of it was very sharp, very sharp commentary. And just doing what social media influencers do, putting out that sharp content that pokes fun at the other side and makes serious, we made a lot of serious commentary. And one of the things we were determined to do was to stand up for the Constitution. And of course, the Second Amendment. Well, when it came time for the Greensboro Gun Show to come to town, the city council decided that they were going to cancel the gun show because of what happened down in Parkland. And I immediately recognized what they were doing and recognized that it wasn't fair, that it wasn't right. And so I heard about the meeting, the morning of the meeting. I worked 10 hours that day, got off, went down to the meeting. And my intent was just to go down, listen to the proceedings, and support the people that I knew would be there in defense of the gun show. But when I got down there and I heard some of the things that were said, I'm just be honest with you, I got really mad. I got really angry.
Be
And I
angry
said,
and sin not.
that's right. And I got up and I had to speak, and I did. And it ended up going viral. It was very well received, and it just changed my life. It really did.
And the legend continues, because in 2019, you ran for lieutenant governor.
I sure did. That's what led me to it. And I tell you what led to that was that I got so many offers from people to try to make money off that speech, because that speech has garnered well over 200 million views. And people wanted me to attach things to it to every time somebody watched, monetize it. And I just said I wasn't going to do that, because I really felt like God was the one that put me behind that podium that night. And he put me there to defend the rights that he's given us in this nation. And he's given all men, quite frankly. But I wasn't going to sell that. I didn't want that sold as a commodity. I didn't want to cheapen it that way. And so the opportunity that I had to influence people, I said the best way I can do that is by serving them. And the best way I believe that I can serve is a dual service. In the secular world, it would be in politics, and in the spiritual world, it would be in the pulpit. And so that's the course that we're on right now.
Well, we often say that we are one blood, one human race, and that God is not a Democrat or a Republican or an independent.
That's right.
So here you are working with a Democrat governor,
yes,
and still standing firm in your values and your understanding. So how is that?
Well, we don't really have a relationship. We see each other every month at the Council of State meeting. But I think that the governor, unfortunately, has missed a golden opportunity. And the golden opportunity is this. We're diametrically opposed on just about every political issue. But I'm sure there are things that we agree on. And I think that it would give great energy to the people of our state if they saw us work together on the issues that we do agree on. If we could come together as mature adults and sit down and talk about the things that we agree on and put aside our disagreements long enough to do good work for the people. And I think that would go a long way in ending some of the rancor that we see and the bitterness that we see that exists today in politics. One of the things that we see is the fact that because we disagree on certain issues, we can't work together on any issue. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think that the governor has missed out on a golden opportunity. And I say he's missed out on the opportunity because I've made it plain that I would be willing to work with him on anything that he and I both agree on.
We can continue to pray for that reconciliation and understanding, and I agree. And so that can happen.
Yes.
And I always say that the dream has to be lived in every generation and every decade and every day on whatever platform is available to you. So I joined in prayer that it can happen.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're going to see. Now, there are thousands, if not millions, of young people who need hope. Mm-hmm. And every answer you have given is an answer of hope and solution. So what could you say to young people today?
The number one thing that I would tell young people is this. Don't ever look at yourself in the mirror and see a victim. Even when you're victimized, don't be a victim, be a victor. Figure out a way to be victorious. The victim mentality that's been preached to our young people today is, I believe, behind a lot of the depression that we see and suicide that we see. People feel hopeless because they don't feel like they can stand up and fight for a better day. We have got to start instilling in our children that you are not a victim. You live in a nation that, thank God, we have the freedoms. They flourish in this country. The God-given freedoms flourish in this country. Do not look at yourself and consider yourself to be a victim. Look at those who came before you, who dealt with far more and overcame far more and did it. And some of them sacrificed their life for you. Take hold of that opportunity and do not be, don't have your back bent and your eyes shut and be unwilling to stand up and take advantage of what was given to you. So that'd be the number one thing I would tell folks. Don't be a victim, be a victor.
Wow, that is so powerful. Well, let's go back to North Carolina as we begin to close. speaking from a platform in North Carolina to the country and to the world, what would be your closing thought?
I guess my closing thought is for people to not, when they look at not just me, but when you look at any elected official, I think the number one thing you should gauge that elected official by is, why are they in office? Look at why they are in office. Are they there because they want to be there? Or are they there because they feel led and they need to be there? Are they there to serve their own purposes? Or are they there to serve the people? Are they there for party? Or are they there for the people that they're supposed to serve? I'm a strong Republican, a staunch Republican, and I believe in the Republican Party. But the Republican Party does not come first. What comes first is the people of North Carolina and what's best for them. And so that's the message that I would leave folks with. It's time for us to, it's great to have your opinions. It's great to have your parties. It's great to fight for what you believe in. But there comes a time in all of our lives when we have to set some of that aside and work with folks that we're diametrically opposed to and don't agree with on some issues for a greater good. And I think because we're not doing that, there are many things that could be solved that are not getting solved. So we got to really learn how to work together. So that's my mission from here on out as an elected official, to make sure that even though we may not agree on everything, I'm sure there are things we do agree on. Let's get them done for the people of North Carolina.
Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, we salute you today.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to keep praying with and for you, and we are encouraged. Let's move forward.
That's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.